this chapter, we are going to learn how to configure Webmail for our email service so that we can use a web browser to access our emails, just like we do every day on Gmail. For that purpose, we will need to install a web server first. We will use Apache web server. You can also use Nginx, but I will stick to Apache for our tutorial. We will also need to install RainLoop, an application that will run on our web server. RainLoop will connect to our Dovecot and Postfix services and show us a web-based user interface for checking our emails and sending new ones. So let's get started. Let's start by installing Apache web server. Please note that the name of the package is Apache 2 rather than just Apache. This is because we are using Apache 2.x series rather than their older 1.x series, which continues to be used by websites which have been running for nearly 2 decades today. Since many of them have chosen not to switch over to the 2.x series, many versions of Linux continue to offer 1.x, although there is no official support for it. So let's test if Apache server is installed and running. Open a browser such as Google Chrome, Firefox, Microsoft Edge, or Safari. Point the browser to the following URL. What you see here is the default page shown by Apache. It's a test page that Apache splashes at you to tell you that it's working. It is up to you to configure your own web apps and show your own web pages from Apache. So as the next step, we will install RainLoop. First, we will create a directory called Webmail to download and install RainLoop. Here is the official website of RainLoop app. It is at https://www.rainloop.net. You're looking for their community edition, so here is where you can download it. We will use wget command to download the zip file. Here goes. RainLoop has been downloaded. Now we need to unzip the zip file. But since we do not have unzip command, we need to install that first. Let's unzip RainLoop. 3 entries have been created after the unzip. A directory named RainLoop, a directory named data, and an index.php file. This is the main directory for RainLoop. I need you to note 2 things here. The first thing to notice is that the index file is a PHP file, which means that we need to install PHP to run RainLoop. Secondly, note down the entire path of the directory in which you are right now. We will need this when we configure Apache during the next step. You can use the pwd command, which is actually the abbreviation of present working directory. You can see the full path shown as a response to the command. We can come back to this path when we need it. But first, let's install PHP language and a module which allows Apache to execute PHP scripts. In addition, we also need 2 PHP extensions named PHP curl and PHP XML. Here's one command that installs all of our required dependencies. PHP and its support module have been installed. To verify that PHP is working, let's use the following command, which is a way of printing hello on a line of its own. It is important not to miss a single symbol in this command. Please make sure you use all the backslashes, quotes, and even semicolon correctly. Otherwise, you will get errors. But here is the point. Even if you get an error that says parse error, you know that PHP is working. So just move on if you see a parse error. Now it's time to configure Apache. We need to configure the file etc apache 2 sites available 000 default.conf. Inside the file, add the following lines. The first line says that the root directory of the website, http mail.tech101.in, itself should take the contents from home, DevOps, Webmail. Where did we get this directory name from? From the pwd command that we had used earlier. You can copy-paste the result of that command once you are inside the directory that contains index.php of RainLoop. The next section, which is in XML format, allows web browsers to access the contents of the directory so that they can request the various PHP scripts inside the directory, including the home page index.php. With these changes done, you can now save the file and restart Apache. Let's request our web page again. And an error. Thankfully, it's quite clear saying that the data folder has no write permissions. We can solve this by changing the ownership of the folder to the user www.data, who is the user that Apache assigns ownership for all HTTP requests. So any folder that PHP needs to write into should be owned by or at least have write access for www.data user. Now if you refresh the page, you will see the RainLoop login screen. But this page is not ready to work yet. Instead, we need to visit the following page first. Think of this page as one for the administrator of RainLoop app itself. The admin will first configure which servers to use for IMAP and SMTP, along with a bunch of other things. Thereafter, regular users can use their usernames and passwords to access their emails. By default, the username and password for the admin user of RainLoop are admin and 12345 respectively. We will change the password as soon as we enter the admin panel. Right on cue, RainLoop warns us about the rather weak password and instructs us to change it immediately. So we'll change that. That's done. Now let's configure IMAP and SMTP. The domains section lets us do that. We are going to remove gmail.com and the others listed here. We don't have to configure RainLoop to access any of these email services. But it's a good idea if you want all of your email accounts inside RainLoop. For now, let's add our mail.tech101.in domain to RainLoop. Let's use the test button to check if the configuration works as expected. Yes, it does, because the button turns green. Just for fun, let's configure a mistake so that we can see how the test button warns us. Now we can add the domain. So mail.tech101.in reflects in your list of domains. In the login section, type in mail.tech101.in as the default domain. This will help the email users log in using simply their username rather than having to type the part after the @ symbol. For example, just Henry instead of henry@mail.tech101.in. One more aesthetic change will be wonderful. Let's go to the branding section and change a few things. Done for now. Let's go back to the non-admin web page and see how things work. Let's log in as Henry and see how things work. Recall that the username is Henry and the password is H3NRY. And we are in. Our freshly configured webmail is here. You can see the list of folders in the leftmost panel, the list of emails inside a folder in the middle panel, and the contents of an open email in the large right panel. Fantastic! At the top, there is a panel for other tasks too, the most important one being the green button to compose a new email message. Let's test if our webmail works fully. Let's send a message from Gmail to our mail.tech101.in account, Henry, and see if the message pops up in our inbox. There it is, works like a charm. What about outgoing? Gmail has received our email and we can see it here. So there it is. We have come a long way from our third chapter where we started with the installation of MySQL. Now we have a fully functioning webmail which we can use on our desktop computers, laptops, tablets, and smartphones. Congratulations! But now we need to think about security. Starting with SSL, we will plug all the security holes in our email server and make it safe to use over the internet. So see you in the next chapter.